Hi, my name is Qui Nguyen with Vietnamese American TV. Today we have the honor to interview Ms. Vo Nguyen. She's a case manager for Prince William County regarding mental health issues. Welcome, Vo, and please take a few seconds to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here to speak to our community about the importance of mental health within the Asian American community. There's such a need to focus on mental health, because without mental health there is no health. So I am very pleased to be here with you today.
And with Prince William County, and we are recognizing that mental health issue is a curable disease, or we might call it the condition. Could you explain to us how a person gets in the mental health issue challenge, and how do we prevent it from happening, and how do we recognize the patterns? Because mental health issues have not become a topic of discussions until recently, and now the government is recognizing that as a condition, and sometimes it affects people at the workplace as well. So let's start with you explaining to us how it is diagnosed and how to prevent it from happening.
Yeah. Those are very important. That's a very important question. We'll start off with promotion of mental health. Mental health, because it's so important to all of us. And so promoting that mental health, doing what we need to do to help encourage our mental health, such as being around families, being around people that you love, and receiving love in return is a factor, a protective factor, we call it, in the promotion of mental health. And then you have the next issue of prevention of mental health. So how do we prevent mental health conditions from occurring? So then we focus on minimizing or reducing factors that can cause to mental health issues, such as substance abuse, or there's other issues such as addictions, gambling addictions. Nowadays, social media has become an addiction as well in young young Asian Americans, youth as well. And then in terms of treatment, how an average person is not going to be able to know and understand signs and symptoms. So one of the first things, if there's any changes in sleep patterns, or a person appears to be angry out of the blue, or just excessive worrying, not being able to function, taking care of their physical health, not eating, those are some of the signs and symptoms that the person may need mental health intervention. And once a person or loved one is concerned or worried that the person may have mental health illness, they can within the Virginia, contact their local CSB or Community Service Board. Here in Prince William County, we have community service. We dropped the board only because we want to focus on just the community services. We have a lot of counselors to help guide the person and help diagnose and figure out what the issues may be before treatment can happen.
Okay, thank you. And I have a question. Let's just say that a loved one of ours and a friend of ours or a colleague that is going through mental health issues, and we see the symptoms. And these victims tend to be very sensitive. How do you approach these people to let them know that there's help available? And sometimes when mental health is causing depression and sometimes suicidal. So how do we approach these sensitive individuals without upsetting them to get help for them?
With love. Approach it with love. The first thing that the person who goes through a mental health crisis, if you will, needs is acceptance, love, need to know that their loved one cares for them and wants to help them. They need to know that they can come to somebody who they can trust to to share what it is that they may be experiencing. So that is the first step, is approach the person with love and ask them if there's anything that they can do to help.
So let's say the second step is after the acknowledgement, then it's the process of signing up for treatment. How does that work? Does the government provide a service for that? And do you think the insurance company now is accepting that as a curable disease and will pay for the treatment?
Yeah, depending on the person's age. And also depending on the insurance, but most insurance, including Medicaid, provides payments for mental health services. But the first thing is a loved one or the individual themselves can contact the CSB, or they can call the National Mental Health Crisis Hotline, which is 988 number. That is a number that has been funded at the national level, but they will direct the person or concerned family members to the appropriate locale to receive services. And yes, insurance, because they do cover, they recognize that mental health is an important piece of a person's overall health and well-being. They do cover payments, and they have a list of local providers as well, community providers, in addition to covering or paying the CSB to provide those services.
Okay, the alcoholic and the gambling addiction and drug addiction, they have rehab centers. Do we have such a thing for mental health?
Well, depending on the severity of the person's mental health, there is a host of services and different interventions that the person, but ultimately, yes, if the person needs hospitalization on a temporary basis, that there is state as well as state-run facilities to help the person recover, if you will, or be stable before they return to either work or to the family and to the community. And
also, I have a question regarding our older Vietnamese Americans that are aging, and that population is growing. And do you think they get depressed or they have mental health issues because of loneliness or being away from their children or not being taken care of by their children? And not by choice, but people have a workload here that they have to commit to. How do we help these older people overcoming and getting treatments for those?
By staying connected. There's a recent research that speaks to even after the pandemic, with the restrictions, separations, physical distancing, that the percentage of older Vietnamese refugees, I think about 30 to 50% have shown signs of depression and getting treatment for that. So yes, there's absolutely, and given the pandemic, it just exacerbates the problems. So I think staying connected, visiting, just that, the human interaction is so important. And we see it across the board, not only in older adults.
Now that we're going from older people to, let's say teenagers that are growing up in families, and some of us parents are so ignorant about the symptoms, and we called it tough love. Is that appropriate in this environment for people that are suffering from that without knowing it? And are we making it worse by applying this tough love methodology or approach?
Absolutely, it could. It could worsen the symptoms, and it could drive our young children or our loved ones even further, and closing that communication, line of communication. But there are various trainings for everyone, young Asian American youth or adults to understand more about what mental health is and why it's important, and how we can help or reach out or support our loved ones who may have a mental health issue that may be undiagnosed until the person goes into treatment.
So now let's talk a little bit about the mental health issues in the workforce. And when people go through this condition, I see a lot of bullying, because the people that are bullying these people don't understand. So how do we prevent it from happening to these victims? Because in my understanding, that can cause them to be victims of this, bullying. Absolutely,
and it can be a vicious cycle, because somebody who's bullying might have gone through being bullied themselves. So it's a vicious cycle, and really it's about raising awareness, recognizing that we all have our own issues, whatever that may be at different times, and also if we recognize or see something that's not right, speak it, say it. If we don't, say something, then the victimization or the bullying continues. I mean, this happens to kids in school. It doesn't have to be the workforce. So if you see it, Fairfax County Public School has a no bullying tolerance, policy. So a zero tolerance for bullying. So if somebody sees this, they have to say something and to stop it. Same thing if somebody in the workplace is being bullied because of their disabilities or mental conditions.
Well, I did some research, and what I found, according to these researchers, and I want to run it by you, see if you agree or you have any recommendation. The brain is scientifically deprived of oxygen, and it can cause a person to feel bad and go into a depression or become sad. And so they recommend, the sun, being out in the sun, the outdoors, exercise, to bring more oxygen to the brain, because sometimes the brain deteriorates and the brain loses brain cells, and it can cause a person to be unhappy, and in turn causes that person to be depressed.
Yeah.
What do you think about those?
Yeah, I think it's right on. I think the brain, our brain does have a number of chemicals. We call them happy chemicals, and they actually spells DOSE. First, we need dopamine. Dopamine it makes us happy, and sometimes people compare, eating a chocolate. A piece of chocolate, will increase or boost up our dopamine level. So there are some ways that we can sort of hack our brains to think that, it is releasing certain chemicals. O is for oxytocin. Oxytocin is that. Is when it's touching. Every time you touch a child, if a child is ill, if you've ever been in a NICU, neonatal intensive care unit, touch produces the healing hormones to help the baby heal and recover faster. Same thing, and this is the reason why during the pandemic there is no touch, because of social distancing. So that's why people oxytocin level can go down, and it can affect their mood, like you mentioned, depression. The other piece, the other hormone, happy hormone, is serotonin. Serotonin, you need that, and as well as the endorphins through exercise. It helps to promote or release these happy hormones, and you need all of those.
Well, Bo, you are not a physician, but you sound like one. Thank you for your knowledge, and thank you for helping the community with this interview and the information you gave. And we'll get a hotline that people can call for help, either through Prince William County or through the national hotline, and we'll make sure that our people know how to help their loved ones and their friends and their colleagues go through this terrible disease that is curable, and is now recognized as a disease that we can help people with.
Yeah, thank you very much.